Welcome to today's webinar put on by ESHA Research. As always, we prioritize staying up to date with regulatory changes and strive to provide you solutions as we continue to receive feedback and guidance regarding the new label rules that have recently passed. Today's webinar specifically will focus on dual column labeling and Genesis's new feature allows you to create dual column labels in Genesis from a single recipe. Here's a short list of upcoming training opportunities, with many more listed on the link at the bottom of this slide. That would be esha.com/services/training. The next Advanced Genesis training is nearly booked with only 2 spots remaining. This would be located in Lombard, Illinois, outside of Chicago. We do have openings for the upcoming one in March for a professional training, and we are featuring a new restaurant featured training as in late March as well. Also, for more information on web-based training, jump starts, or all of our options regarding training, you can always email training@esha.com. For the upcoming webinars, our next 2 will kind of continue to dive deeper into the new regulations and the changes and how Genesis R&D is creating new functions to deal with these. So our next webinar will focus on converting nutrient units and the new function, which is an auto calculator in the newest version of Genesis. Following that, on Valentine's Day, we will be taking a closer look at the new FDA definition of dietary fiber. A great day to think about your heart. So join us and for more upcoming webinars, please. We also maintain all of our archived webinars. You can go to the link here listed at the bottom, which is on our website. Some ones we'd like to highlight would be the new FDA Nutrition Fact Label Part 1, 2, and 3. These are going to be answering some more basic questions regarding the new regulations that came into effect in July. So please reference those for more detailed information. Okay, for those of you who are new to ESHA Research, we've been around since 1981. We were started with the goal of creating a comprehensive nutrition database, nutrient and diet analysis software. As a reminder, the program we are working in and talking about today is Genesis R&D. First released in 1991, we have continued to update this program to stay on top of changes in the food labeling world as things have evolved through time. Still, the achievements and uses of Genesis remain the same: menu and nutrient analysis, auditing purposes, as well as allergen, ingredient statement, and nutrient content claim compliance. So today, for our agenda, we will take about 45 minutes to cover the topic. We'll start with the timeline for compliance. We'll move into detailed information regarding the dual column regulations. We'll talk about how RACC changes could potentially affect the need for a dual column label, and we will show how to create a dual column label from a single recipe in Genesis R&D. My colleague Ben will be showing you that. And as always, we'll leave some time for questions and answers. As a reminder, this webinar is recorded, and we'll be sending out the recording with any questions we didn't get to within the next day. If makes 10 million in annual food sales or more, you have 2 years to make the transition from July 26, 2018. For those that make less than 10 million in annual food sales, we have 3 years to make the transition, so July 26, 2019. Something else I would like to clarify, which we continue to receive questions on, is exactly how the timeline date works. Basically, the compliant date refers to the date the item is labeled. So when in production, if your product is labeled on or after July 26, 2018, or 2019, depending on which category you fit into, the package will be required to have the new label format. If it is labeled up to July 25th, 2018 or 2019, again, depending on which category you fit in, the package can still maintain the old label format throughout the remainder of the shelf life of the product. So that's kind of the distinction, is the date that was actually labeled. So let's dive into this whole dual column labeling. What is the purpose of this dual column labeling thing? Well, according to the CFR code, the purpose of the dual column labeling is to provide nutrition information for multiple ways in which people are likely to consume a product. Consumption data show that while some people eat certain products in a single eating occasion. Others may eat the product over time or share it. Dual column labeling provides nutrition information for all of these scenarios. So that's sort of the basis of where we get started here. So first of all, why do we need to use this dual column labeling? What are the reasons for using it? So the only required instance in which we are required to use a dual column label would be when our package size is between 200 and 300% of the RACC. As of the new regulations that passed in July, those products would be required to have a dual label. One column is going to be on a per serving basis, and the second column is going to be on a per container basis. This is now available to be produced in edit label in Genesis R&D. Ben will be showing you that in a bit. And again, that is the only required instance for this dual column scenario. There are other reasons we can voluntarily use a dual column label, and these other reasons to use it, and if we want to create that type of dual column label, would still be an advanced label in Genesis R&D. So there is a distinction in how the system will handle specifically making a dual column label from a single recipe for the 200 to 300% RACC rule, and then the other reasons here where we can voluntarily use a dual column, such as foods that are as packaged and as purchased, as prepared, or as packaged and as prepared, like popcorn or pancake mix. Also, common combinations of foods, so cereal and milk. 2 columns for different units, so we could show what 1 slice of bread would give us and then what 100 grams of bread might give us. And then lastly, when we want to show percent DV for 2 different RDI profiles. So we could have an RDI profile for an infant and an RDI profile for a 1 to 3-year-old, or another example would be a column for the adult standard RDI profile and a column for a lactating and pregnant RDI profile. Again, these ones remain in advanced labels, whereas the single recipe 200 to 300% RACC rule is now in edit label in Genesis. So it's important to think of this in context of the larger RACC guidelines, which put us in different operating label requirements based on our size of our package. Here you can see a list of categories. So if your package size is 50% or less of the RACC, the serving size declaration will need to be the number of units closest to the reference amount. So if you have the reference amount for a cookie is 30 grams, if you have a cookie that weighs 15 grams, we will need 2 cookies to get us to closer to the RACC than 1 cookie. If your package weighs between 51 and 66% of the RACC, you have the option of declaring either 1 or 2 servings. If your package is between 67 and 199% of the RACC, it must be 1 unit, and that is the single serving container rule, which is also newly enacted with the new regulations. And lastly, we land here, where we will be looking at 200 to 300% of the RACC. If our package weighs between 200 and 300% of the RACC, we are required to use a dual column. The first column is going to be for the serving size, and the second column is going to be for the package size. There are certain exemptions from dual column labeling, so let's talk about them. We break them down here in terms of food type product exemptions and labeling exemptions. Firstly, when products voluntarily show 2 columns for either as packaged and as prepared, or for products that show 2 columns for different DV, for different RDI values, those items will be exempt from the 200 to 300% dual column rule. The thinking here is that the scenarios listed above would provide the consumer ample information from which to draw nutrient values, in some cases more valuable than the information you might get from a 200 to 300% dual column package label. Fresh fruits, vegetables, and seafood are also exempt due to the variation in weight, which naturally occurs in those products. An apple that I pick up today might be quite different than an apple I pick up tomorrow, and so varying weight items like that would be exempt from dual column. Secondly, prior to the new rules that came out in July 2016, there were already certain food types that were exempt from nutrition labeling in general. You see this in the latter part of my list, which shows things like bottled water, tea leaves, food colors, etc. For now, the FDA has said they will consider refraining from taking regulatory or compliant actions against only the products listed here, specifically those in my bracket, until such time as they go through the rulemaking process to address issues of mandatory and dual column nutrition labeling for these products. So for now, these items are exempt. However, this could change. If you consider the new RACC for a bottled water, we now have a larger RACC. This larger RACC may, in some cases, cause something like sodium to rise above the 5 milligram threshold, requiring nutrition labeling, meaning the bottled water would no longer be exempt from labeling, and it might also require a dual column label. As shown with more guidance, we will of course keep you abreast of our interpretation and how to handle this specific situation. RACC changes can also affect the need for dual column labeling. We have shown these slides previously. This is not an extensive list, but we do show different categories that have been affected by the RACC changes. A second slide here showing some more options. So you might be thinking, well, how could this affect dual column labeling? Let's look at a specific example. So here we have the baked good category for bagel and muffin, and this reference category has been updated from 55 grams to 110 grams. Previously, you'll see this old column, we were looking at a 55-gram serving size, and we had 6 servings per container. With the new RACC, we're now looking at a 110-gram serving size, also taking the servings per container from 6 to 3, requiring a dual column label for this type of product. So you really have to think about when you're transitioning your products from the old to the new label, if dual column is something that you need to take into account. RACC changes might be something that cause that. So I suggest looking through the FDA RACC table, identifying all the categories that you work within, and understanding if any of those have been updated. Once you get that base down, you can then, you would want to adjust your serving size as necessary, and we can see if from that a dual column label might be required. Lastly, another thing to consider in regards to dual column labeling is nutrient content claims. The most important thing to remember is that if you're making a nutrient content claim, it must be in regards to the first column, so the reference amount of the item, and we must include a statement following the nutrient content claim that references the quantity of food that corresponds to the claim. So here we see that we're able to make a good source of iron claim. So we are saying good source of iron per serving, good source of iron per 110 gram serving, or good source of iron per reference amount, with the reference amount listed there. We need to do this when the claim would not hold true for both columns. So here we make a good source of iron, but if I go to the full package, we are actually in an excellent source of iron. So the good source of iron is specifically in reference to this column. If the claim holds true for both columns, this secondary piece of information is not needed. In this case, we don't meet that scenario, and so we need to have a statement here which defines exactly where we're making that nutrient content claim from. With that, I will hand it over to my colleague Ben, who can show you how to approach dual column in Genesis R&D.
Thank you, Maya. Let me get my screen changed over here. We can take a look at the Genesis application and how it handles dual column labeling. We're going to look at 2 different scenarios. We're going to look at basically the 2 that Maya had pointed out. The first one being if you're at the 200 to 300% RACC, a dual column label for a single recipe. And then the other case, we'll look at a salad that has a dressing, so we'll look at the nutritional values of a dual column, the first column being just the salad, the second one salad with dressing. I wanted to point out that the new regulations that were released in July were implemented into Genesis version 11.1, which was also released in July. The dual column for a single recipe setting and feature was released with version 11.2, which was released just a couple months ago. If you wanted to take a look at what version of Genesis you're currently running, simply go to the Home tab here and then click on the About button, and that'll tell you your current version. If your interface looks a little bit different than this, you have some drop-down menus, the last one being Help. You're probably running a little bit older version, probably version 9, and you'll want to update to be able to see all this information. So I'm going to go ahead and open up a recipe now. We've got a blueberry muffin recipe that Maya had created for me that she was actually looking at the label a couple minutes ago for. So we've got our recipe that we've created. This is a muffin. We're going to say that the muffin total weight is 8 ounces, which is a little over 200% of the RACC being 110 grams. So if you look at edit recipe, we'll look at our serving size as 110 grams, which is our RACC. So if we look at our label now, currently, if you create a normal recipe, you'll generally see this. You're going to see the new nutrition label, single column for just the serving size. If we want to go ahead and create this as a dual column to have both the RACC and the full package, which will be one whole muffin, we want to go into Edit Label. Then under the General tab, you want to make sure a couple of settings are selected. So regulation, of course, you want it to be the United States. Category, you want to make sure it is Nutrition Facts, not Nutrition Facts 1990, as that's the old regulations. And then on the label here, instead of selecting an adult standard Nutrition Facts panel, you want to go ahead and select the dual column option. When you select dual column, a few more features will open up automatically here, so you'll know you'll have to add in a little bit more information. Go ahead and click OK, that way we can look at the label while I point out those different options. So now we've got a new label. When I switch it over to dual column, the second column is not going to be filled out properly. It's not going to know how much of the total item you want to have in. So right now I'm just showing zeros across the board here. So going into Edit Label again, let's slide this guy over a little bit. We have our serving size and servings per container, of course, like any normal label that are going to show up here. You have the dual column section here, and for this you'll have 3 different values you'll want to add in. So column heading number 1 will be the heading for the serving size. So this one's going to be, it shows 1/2 muffin here because that's what I typed in here. The column heading 2 will be the second column just above the calories, so whole package. And then the container size is the one you'll also want to make sure you put in. So right now my quantity is 0 grams. I mentioned before we're going to have an 8-ounce muffin here, so we have 8 ounce weight. When we go ahead and hit OK here, we'll now have a 260 calorie serving with a 540 calorie whole package for the entire package, the entire muffin. Going back into Edit Label, even for this new option with the dual column, you still have all the old functions and features as well. So if we look at like format options, you still have all of the different options here. If you want to show voluntary nutrients, say you want to show your B1 value, you certainly can check that and hit OK and show that as well. So all the same great functions and features and options that you had previously with old labels, but now showing both of those columns here. So nice and easy, not a lot of complexity there. We'll go ahead and move on to our second option for creating a dual column label, and that's going to be within the advanced label area. So I'll go ahead and close out this blueberry muffin recipe. I'm going to open up our 2 recipes so we can take a quick look at them. So we've got a salad blend here, and then we're also going to go and open a new recipe for our salad green with dressing. So I mentioned before, Maya created these recipes for me before. We've got a base salad with just a few greens in it, and then we've got our finished recipe that has both our salad green blend recipe in it as well as a salad dressing sub recipe inside of it as well. So to create that dual column label that has both, we'll have to go into advanced labels. We did have a webinar on before, but they really are built for creating an additional label for an existing recipe. So we'll hit a new advanced label. We'll just call it salad with dressing. Again, regulation and category, you'll want to make sure are US and nutrition facts, not 1990, but just nutrition facts. Label option here, again, you will want to select the dual column option. And then to add in those recipes that we had before, we simply go to the bottom here that has our recipe list, click on Add, and we'll add our salad green blend. And we will add our salad green with dressing. When you initially add in these recipes, it will add it based on one serving of whatever the recipe is built on. I'll go ahead and hit OK just so we can have the application draw up our label. I'm going to look at it while I'm discussing some of these other options. If you need to go back into that last view we were looking at that lets you add in different recipes and adjust the label, you simply go into the Label tab here and then Edit Label. If you want to change the serving size, if the amount of the item that you're wanting to put in is not the exact same amount as a serving in the base recipe, you can click on the recipe here, click on Edit, and you can choose the override recipe serving size to change how much of that recipe is going into this advanced label here. You can also select a different alternate heading here. So right now we have salad green blend, and that's saved within the recipe itself. So we have salad green blend showing as the first column, and then if I go back into the second recipe, it'll show our salad green with dressing as it's showing as the header of the second column. You can also reorganize these. So if you accidentally add in the salad green with dressing recipe first and then salad green blend second, and you wanted to make it the way it's showing here, you can simply use the up and down arrows on the right side here to reorganize where the recipes are in our list. Again, just like any other label, you got your format options, nutrient options, voluntary nutrients that you can add in or remove as needed. And that is all we've got for our dual column labeling within the Genesis application. We're going to go into a few questions now. As always, if you want to contact us, you can use the phone number listed on this page. You can email sales@esha.com or you can email support@esha.com for any support type questions. And we have a few helpful resources. We've got our LinkedIn page with great discussions. We've got our blog on our website and our e-newsletter that goes out every month. So I'll just jump into our first question, which I'm going to let Maya answer because it's a little bit more regulatory. We had a question regarding multi-pack containers. I'm going to go over to a slide here. What if I have a multi-pack of bottles wrapped in a see-through cellophane wrapping, and you can view the nutrition fact panels on the individual bottles through the wrapping? Am I required to have a dual column label? Maya, you want to address that a little bit further?
Sure, thanks, Ben. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting scenario where you would meet perhaps in between the 200 to 300% RACC rule. However, what we found in the regs regarding that was that if you are able to view through the cellophane and actually view the individual nutrition fact panels in the multi-pack container, that no, you would not be required to have the dual column label out on the outside of the package. If, however, it was more of a cardboard box where you couldn't actually see through and see the nutrition fact panels, then the outside container would be required to have a dual label. So kind of an interesting specific scenario. Thanks for that question.
Thank you, Maya. We had our second question here. Why am I not seeing dual column as an option within the label settings? Let me go back over into the Genesis application. One thing you'll want to make sure of, let me open back up our muffin recipe here. One thing you'll want to make sure of in the edit label area here is that you do have the correct regulation and category selected. So that certainly can change what you're seeing here. So if we go into Nutrition Facts 1990, we won't see dual column, we'll just see the different age ranges and the standard label. So you'll have to make sure that you have the US regulation selected because it's the only one with a dual column label, and you'll have to make sure that Nutrition Facts, not parenthesis 1990, is selected so that you can select that dual column option. All right, our next question here. Is there a size exemption for the dual column label? Maya, you want to go ahead and take that one?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question, and we have been looking through a lot of the regulations, and we've actually found a little bit of conflicting information in some cases. So at this point in time, we're going to do some more research on that. It might be something that perhaps a direct email to the FDA would be necessary. So stay tuned. We'll be putting more information out as we get that information.
Perfect, thank you. Next two questions, pretty similar, and I pointed them out a little bit, but I'll take a look at that one more time. How do I change the servings per container statement on the label? And also, how do I change the per serving name container? So let me go back into Genesis again. on this this main page here, you can add a serving size and servings per container right inside of the edit label. So let me close that back out so we can take a look at exactly where I got to it. In our recipe, we'll go to the recipe tab, edit label, and then serving size and servings per container is entered in here. You can select to hide the calculated serving size and then type in your total serving size for your label. You can also change the way serving size and servings per container are displayed as a title on the label as well. So you can display serving size as either serving size or serve size, and you can change the servings per container to just servings. So say servings 4 instead of servings per container 4.
Cool. And
Right.
it looks like we do have another one that came in, Ben. I'll go ahead and read that one off. So it says, if you have a single recipe with 2 pack sizes, example, a 5-pound pack size and then another 30-pound pack size, do you need to make 2 separate labels, or can you create one nutrition for both with different servings per container? So the answer is yes to both of those questions. So you do need 2 separate labels. One would be for the 5-pound pack size and one would be for the 30-pound pack size. Only thing that we would need to change would be servings per container, and that is actually a function that you can use advanced labels in Genesis to do. So from a single recipe, we can, in edit label, we can view a certain servings per container. Ben's going to go and show us now. And then we can also create from that same exact recipe an additional label with a different servings per container. So Ben, you can sort of tell the folks what you're doing here.
Absolutely. So I've gone in to create a brand new advanced label. I'm going to go ahead and select our blueberry muffin recipe here. So just like when we did the salad one, I've simply went into Home, New, Advanced Label. We're going to create a recipe named Muffin 6-pack. I've added my blueberry muffin recipe into our label now. And this will go ahead and create our nutrition label. And now we can go right back into edit label and change these servings per container to, this would be 12 because the serving is half of a muffin. And so now we've got our advanced label that has 12 servings per container. And then we've got our label from our recipe that's just showing 2, so we can switch back and forth. And of course, I'm not showing my dual column on both of these, but you can certainly change both of these to show the dual column if that's the need as well. The first one, the one for the recipe, probably would need it. The other one would not because it's not a single package. It's not 200 to 300% of the RACC.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Okay, and then we do have another one that came in. The question is, how about if the package size is varied as a catch weight item? Example, 8 to 9 pounds cooked turkey breast, lobe. How will the nutritional look? Well, you are able to put the term varied on servings per container. If your product naturally varies, you can put servings per container varied. So I think if that is the question, that is how you can go about approaching servings per container. You can put varied as the term. Do you have any more questions, Ben?
Yeah,
okay,
we got 2, it looks like pretty short ones here. Regarding the timeline for compliance, is that based on sales per plant or total company sales? And that would be total company sales. So it's not per plant, it's the full company sales. And then one last question, do you support multi-language for the dual column label? And we do. It can certainly become a very large label, but let me go back into my muffin label here. You simply go into dual column, and then we go to show bilingual, and our US label will now show English and Spanish. So again, the size gets fairly large, but we do have that option for a dual language, dual column label. Any questions that we didn't get to, we'll certainly follow up with you individually after the fact. You will also be emailed a copy of this webinar out if you want to listen to it after the fact. Thank you for attending and have a great day.